Hello, and welcome to this. This is the third and final live stream event of this particular run of Caring for Vulnerable Children. I'll start with introductions, although I'm guessing if you've got to week 6 of the course, you're probably going to know who I am by now. My name is Graeme McPhee. I'm based at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow, in Scotland, and I'm the lead educator on the programme. So glad to have you with us, both if you're watching in real time and also if you're watching the recording of this after the fact. If you've been sticking with the course all the way through, you'll probably be pretty familiar with the format of what we're going to do over the next kind of half hour, 35 minutes or so. I've pulled out kind of various comments, kind of some of the poll results and such things, and I'm just going to kind of use them as the basis for a bit of a chat, a bit of a discussion, and just some reactions to some of the things I'm seeing posted, and also some of the kind of poll results, which are kind of quite interesting, just different things that they throw up. For those of you that are watching in real time, there's the chat bar function on the live stream, and I've got the screen in front of me and I can see that. So if you've got any questions or comments you'd like to make in real time and really put me on the spot, then kind of please post away. And I'll do my best to respond to them. Just want to start by saying, kind of thanking everybody for your involvement and contribution over this run of Caring for Vulnerable Children. This is now our 13th run of Caring for Vulnerable Children. Quite incredible. We've now had over 92,500 different people sign up and register for the programme, which is absolutely fantastic. As always this time, kind of lots of kind of interesting chat and conversation going on. And always, as always as well, we have a truly kind of international audience. You are an international kind of learning community. I think unsurprisingly, because we're based in the UK, the biggest majority of the course participants are from the UK, over 60%. Next biggest after that is Australia, where there's kind of 7% from there, and then a list of over 100 different countries kind of represented. Now, some of the biggest in terms of numbers, we've got India, USA, Nigeria, South Africa, Canada, Ireland. The list goes on. I could list over 100 countries, so it's great to have such a wide and diverse learning community. I guess I can always say something at the start of these sessions, just along the lines of the fact that obviously I'm based here in Scotland, in the UK. A lot of the materials that we use, and certainly Billy's story is set in Scotland and in the UK. But what I would suggest is that the topics and themes that we're talking about are absolutely universal and apply the world over in terms of thinking about children who experience risk and vulnerability and how we best care and respond for them, and some of the challenges and that throws up, and the debates and issues and kind of different responses within society. So what I would be very much encouraging everybody, regardless of where you're based, is to think about how these issues apply and play out in your setting. It's also worth noting as well, as I have done in weeks 2 and weeks 4, that the material in this course was written pre-COVID, and the situation that the kind of world faced and continues to face has created a huge number of kind of challenges for us in relation to kind of how we think about vulnerable children. So the learning materials don't specifically address that, but certainly some of the things we might mention today in the chat, because of some of the comments that come up about kind of circumstances that we now find ourselves facing. So let's kind of jump into the material to kind of start with. I guess I've got 3 or 4 main things that I plan to do in the session. The first is there was a 2-part poll, similar to the 2-part poll that you did in week 1 and 2, where we gave you kind of 10 scenarios in week 5, asked you to select the 3 that you thought where there was most risk and vulnerability, and to kind of explain why. And then in week 6, we gave you some further information. We expanded that scenario and said, right, how does that change your thinking? Kind of what the 3 that you think are there's most risk and vulnerability present now, and kind of how's that changed and why. There's some interesting things in there, so I'm going to pull out kind of 2 or 3 examples there and kind of talk about that and some of the issues that might be thrown up by that. So that's one of the things that we're going to do. Second thing is we're going to talk about Billy's story. You've now had all 6 weeks of Billy's story and the conclusion that our story came to, but again, there's a lot of interesting material to think about and talk about within that, so we're going to do that, and I've pulled out a couple of your comments again. Thirdly, in advance of the sessions, we ask if anybody's got any questions about this particular session, they want to post them. I have a couple of questions posted, so I'm going to make a point of replying to them. And then fourth and finally, we'll just kind of finish up with kind of some general comments as well as we pull this part of the course to an end. So let's start with the scenarios. As I said, there was 10 scenarios, and you'll know this in week 5, and you selected 3, gave you more information in week 6, and said, right, let's kind of change again. And of those 10 scenarios, there's 3 where the amount of people picking them or not picking them changed kind of fairly significantly in terms of the number. So those are the 3 that I'm going to focus on. Now, if you haven't already looked at this, if you go into week 6 and look at the page, you'll see all 10 listed with the percentage rating from week 5 and week 6, and you'll see kind of how they've changed. And you'll also see the comments I've placed overall. But I'm going to pick out kind of 3 in particular here. So I'm going to start with the scenario that Ross, who was 18 months old, and initially you were told he's in hospital with a broken arm. He was in the care of his parents at the time. There is no proof as to what happened. And Ross recorded 24%. You picked him in week 5, first time round. Then you got some more information. It said Ross was referred to by the doctor to the social work department. Records show that Ross has suffered various bruises over recent months. Another baby is due soon. A child protection case conference was held, and it referred Ross to the reporter, meaning the Children's Report, and also you've been finding out about the Children's Game System during the course. And I think perhaps unsurprisingly, the number of people selecting Ross as one of the 3 riskiest scenarios increased quite significantly, went up from 24% to 53%. So kind of more than half of you second time round, more than double had picked it in the first time round. And I think kind of by and large that's not at all surprising, because kind of very young child, and we're now kind of finding out, right, this isn't a one-off in terms of kind of things happening here. No, he's in just now with a broken arm, but there's been a series of bruises over recent months. Bit unsure about what the source of this is. The medical professionals are sufficiently concerned that they have referred this to the social work department. We know another child is on the way, so whatever is happening to Ross in this household, we're going to have a baby entering into that household as well now, and this has triggered a pre-birth meeting and a pre-birth kind of consideration. So I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, right, I'm not at all surprised, and I can recognise why kind of lots of people have got kind of more concern. So we see that big jump, and essentially what we're saying is we've got more information now that there would definitely appear to be kind of risk and vulnerability there, and we're duly concerned. So 53% of you selecting that. So that kind of seems kind of fairly straightforward in terms of that shift. Second one, I'm going to kind of select. Kelly is 14, and in week 5, what you get told is she does not attend school regularly, and when she does, she falls asleep in class. She was referred by her guidance teacher. So only 3% of you selected that in week 5, and again, not surprising at all. Okay, now I guess every time we do an exercise like this where we're kind of saying, like, pick 3 out of 10, it's all you're saying, I've got absolutely no concerns about the other 10 at all. It's an academic exercise in that sense, and just in terms of getting us to think about it a bit more deeply and interrogate notions of risk, etc. So, but still kind of not that surprising that only 3% you pick it first time round, because you're seeing another initial scenarios where there's far more danger signs, and they're getting picked more frequently. But what we did see is this scenario, when you got the material in week 6, goes from 3% to 35%. So why is that? So what you get told is further investigation shows that her father has left the family 2 years ago. Her mother is a drug addict. She falls asleep in class because she's looking after her 4-year-old brother and a 3-year-old sister at home. She's worried that something will happen to her mum. So you've got far more information. And this has gone way beyond just a 14-year-old girl falling asleep at home, falling asleep at school, for which there could be any amount of explanations. We've kind of got a lot of evidence here, and there's kind of obvious concerns. So we know we've got a single parent family, so you've got two kind of much younger siblings who are kind of, obviously the younger children are, they're kind of more dependent they are on their carers. Mum's got addiction issues, and Kelly's taking on a caring role, and then so we can and likely in some way link her behaviour at school in terms of falling asleep, perhaps with some of the demands that are being placed on her in terms of that caring role, and kind of worry and a kind of whole range of different things. So again, very unsurprising that going from 3% to 35%. And I think a lot of people are thinking, right, that this is concerning not just for Kelly, but for our kind of younger siblings as well, in terms of kind of how they've been looked after within this and that. That is, when I say that isn't in any way kind of criticising or judging Kelly. It's just that there's concern about all of them, and thinking about how the children are best protected and supported, and how can mum be supported to try and provide a better kind of family environment for the three children. So again, not at all surprising that we see this rise from 3% to 35%. So those first two scenarios we see a rise, and that a lot of sense there. Right, so the third scenario I'm going to select is kind of different in that sense, whereas the number went from high to low. And I think there's some interesting things to think about here, a number going from high to low. So the scenario you got here in first time round is Jane is 7 and Jim is 5. Their mother lives with a man who regularly physically assaults her. Neighbours reported their concerns to the police. So you had that first time round, 62% of you. Okay, so one of the scenarios that most of you selected, not the highest, but kind of one of the highest, and not at all surprising, because it's short and sweet, but what you're getting told in week 5 is we've 2 young children and they're in a house where domestic violence is present, and the impact of domestic violence on children when it's present in their household is well evidenced, well researched. We know a lot about it, and it's a huge concern. And actually linking that to the circumstances over the last 6 or 7 months in terms of kind of COVID and lockdowns that various societies around the world have experienced, there are increasing amounts of concern about what has been happening behind closed doors in a number of kind of houses and kind of situations, and about the increased risk that many people may have been placed at due to kind of increased exposure to domestic abuse and the inability to escape from it during lockdown. So 62% of you select this first time round. And then I think this is a bit that is really noteworthy and interesting, and I really want to focus on, because the scenario in week 6 then moves on to, so what we're told is the children have never been assaulted but have witnessed their mother being abused. The police referred the children to the hearing system because of the concern about their safety. The children love their mother and she loves them. Okay, so what we've been told is that there's domestic abuse in the house. The children are being physically hurt themselves, but they have witnessed their mother being abused. And what is perhaps surprising here, well, I guess you'll decide for yourself whether the word surprising is the right word here, but the number goes from 62% to 16%. So only 16% of people second time round have still got this in their top 3, saying this is one of the scenarios that I'm most concerned about. And I get it. No, in terms of kind of unpick, like, kind of, why is this one went down? Because I think the other two that I've highlighted, the numbers going up are kind of quite logical and evident, in a sense. We'll get more information. It is clear that the situation for both Ross and Kelly, the situation is, we now know a more clear idea about the risk and potential danger that is present, and we'll get more concern and more people select it. In this scenario, we're seeing a huge reduction, and I guess we can only assume that in a number of cases it's because the children haven't been victim of the assault themselves. but we still know that domestic violence is present in the house. And actually, we know that the children have witnessed this. They're seeing it, they're hearing it, they're living with it, they're feeling it, they're experiencing it, and it's impacting upon them. And they're not being physically hit themselves, but the impact on them in terms of their kind of that sense of safety, emotional growth, development, everything that we know about domestic abuse in terms of the impact on children in households where domestic violence is present. This has all been confirmed. You know, that the material in the second part of the scenario doesn't say actually it was a bit of an overreaction, or that it's been proved that domestic abuse wasn't present. It's been confirmed that we not only know that it's there, we know that the children are witnessing it. But we see it coming down. So in some way, perhaps what it's pointing towards is a lack of appreciation of the fact that for children, that they don't need to physically be the physical victim of the abuse themselves to have tremendously damaging emotional and developmental impact on them. And the bottom line is, what we do know is they are in a house where violence is happening, where domestic abuse is happening. So whilst they've not been on the receiving end of that yet, they're in a house where it's been confirmed assaults are happening. So in many ways, I used the word surprising that it's come down. I mean, you could go a bit further and say, is this alarming? Should we be describing this as alarming that so many course participants have kind of moved this off their top three in terms of not recognising the danger and impact that this scenario could have on Jane and Jim? And perhaps does this reflect something about attitudes towards or knowledge about domestic violence and the myriad of ways in which it can impact on victims, and the children are absolutely victims in this scenario alongside their mother. So I think that there's something really significant for us to think about, and that we know in societies around the world, attitudes towards domestic violence are kind of very much under the microscope, and we've got lots of attitudes that really need to be challenged in relation to this. So I think this number going from 62 down to 16% in this scenario gives us something really to think about. So that was the poll. So I said that was the first thing that I wanted to think about. So thanks for taking part in the poll. Secondly, what I want to do is move on to Billy's story. So I'm just going to pause and take a quick drink of water here just to make sure I keep my voice. Right, so a bit of a disclaimer here. So we did week 5 at Billy's story. We ended it, we created a poll. We didn't open up Billy's story straight away at the beginning of week 6 to make sure that people had a chance to vote. The voting's now closed, and Billy's story is now open. If you've not watched the final part of Billy's story, and especially if you're watching this in the recording, you may want to kind of stop watching this just now, jump back and watch Billy's story, and then come back. But if not, then kind of please listen away. So if you've watched the end of Billy's story, you'll have seen how we concluded this telling of the story. The panel members made the decision that Billy would stay at home. They felt that was the best thing for him, but they were keen that extra supports be offered to Billy and his mum in order that he'd be best supported at home. But they kind of came to the conclusion that was the best thing for him. So I guess kind of one interesting thing, I guess, in relation to this. So again, the result of the poll is on the page. You may have seen this already. So in terms of how you guys voted, 68% of you kind of said, prior to seeing any of it, said you thought Billy should stay at home. So, doing the maths, 32% of you kind of thought otherwise, thought perhaps a a temporary something else. Foster care, kind of respite care may prove a better option. I guess what's interesting for us here is that we know this, also you don't at this point, we're kind of sharing this information with you. I've said this is the 13th run of the course. That's the lowest number we've ever had in terms of people, in terms of the participants saying they thought it would be best for Billy to stay at home. Typically, it'd be between 73, and it's actually been as high as 85% in some other runs said they thought the best thing for Billy was to stay at home. So in this run, there've been still the vast, over 2/3, 68%, but kind of quite a significant number saying kind of something else. So that's interesting in itself, and I've kind of pulled out kind of 3 comments that people made on the page in relation to this that I kind of think say kind of some interesting things. So first, I've picked out kind of Lorraine Murray. So Lorraine, thank you for the comment that you posted, and you kind of highlighted that, well, you said, I understand how Billy would not want to leave his mum, and I think in the short term that was the correct decision, provided there was something put in place to support him. And I think this is the kind of crucial, something that's crucial, and it'll link into some questions that have been asked kind of later on about because there's been a constant theme here all through your 6 weeks since Billy's story started, that we're concerned and we feel Billy and his mum, the family unit, need more support. And actually the best way to support Billy in many ways would be to support Billy's mum. And so the panel have kind of pretty much came to the same conclusion, but in a sense it'll be what happens next will be the kind of crucial factor here in terms of, right, well, will these supports be available? And Lorraine goes on to kind of talk about kind of some of the things that might be supportive for Billy. But this notion about that this is the right decision, but it's really got to be followed through on. And I'm saying it's the right decision in Lorraine's assessment, but it's really got to be followed through on. And likewise, Lindsay McLaughlin, Lindsay, thanks for your comment. And she says, like, I think the panel reached the correct decision. Billy and his family need collective support. So again, this sense of, it's not just about Billy as an isolated child here, it's about the best way to support Billy is to support the family unit. So Billy and his family need collective support to help them through this difficult period. And she says that Billy was often obviously relieved he could stay at home, and they both need each other. And I think there's a kind of strong argument to say actually that no matter what's going on with Billy's mum, no matter what's going on at home, the biggest support and the biggest supporting factor that Billy's got just now is his mum. So there's kind of quite a strong argument to suggest that actually moving, it might be well intentioned if Billy were temporarily moved somewhere else, might that actually remove him from the one thing that is providing him with kind of that's most important to him and the most support at this stage. But then Lindsay also goes on to say austerity measures have undoubtedly left many vulnerable families without adequate support, which they desperately need. More organisations and services are required to lift people out of poverty in order to improve their lives. And I think that's kind of quite important because we, in the story, and also Billy's story is fictional, but it's based on kind of real things that are happening, that we talk about the organisation in the community that is supporting Billy, and there's some challenges and some questions about their kind of continued funding. And certainly in the UK for the last 10 years, the financial landscape for social work, for social care, and for many kind of community-based services has been challenging to say the least. We've seen budgets slashed across the board. We've seen a lot of preventative services either disappear completely or be cut, and issues of poverty are more relevant for us than ever. Now I know and certainly in the UK there's a whole political debate about how we define and measure, engage poverty, but by any sort of definition that I would argue that we've seen it increase, and we've seen increasing numbers within society be placed into poverty, at risk of poverty, and all the potential impact that can have. And what we've especially seen in the UK is in work poverty, and kind of thinking about this scenario in relation to kind of Billy's mum. So Lindsay, I think you make some interesting points here. So a lot of comments saying that I think the panel made the correct decision. Now, there's an interesting kind of counterpoint here, and it was made by Amanda Ramsden. So Amanda, kind of thank you for making your comment, and Amanda, thanks for sharing. You chose to share some kind of personal information about your own circumstances, and you were saying this kind of, as you were thinking about this, that you could recognise arguments for and against the two different options that we presented you with in the story. But what Amanda shared in her post and shared with other learners was that when she was young, she says, my mum was ill and no family could look after me and my sisters, so we went into short-term foster care for 6 months. We could still visit her mum in that time. We also felt loved, and she said it didn't have a negative impact on them. Our mum got better and we all went back to living together. So I say, Amanda, thanks for kind of sharing that information. And I think it's an important point to make here. Now, again, Billy is a fictional story, and we've asked you to take part in this poll based on a limited amount of information. Billy's story is about 24 minutes in total over the 6 weeks, so you get enough information for us to kind of tell a story, but there would be lots to kind of think about. But I guess the kind of point here is that because this is the outcome of Billy's story here, it wouldn't mean to say that temporary or respite care arrangements in other scenarios might not be the best solution for it. And every case has absolutely got to be judged on its merits. Every case has got to be judged individually in terms of what's going to be in the individual best interest of that child or those children, and that assessment process being an important part of that. So yeah, Amanda, that could well be the appropriate course of action in other scenarios, and it would absolutely have to be based on assessment. But linking what you've said into the other comments from Lorraine and Lindsay and others, that the system or society would be much better placed to respond if we were experiencing less resource issues and less finance issues, and that is a factor at play here in many cases, in terms of the ability of organisations or individuals to respond, and about the impact of poverty. And we introduced that in week 1, and we've come back to it in week 6, and the linkage between vulnerability and risk and problematic or kind of challenging circumstances and poverty are it's all interlinked in so many instances. So we can't shy away from that conversation. But thanks for taking part in Billy's story, and thanks for commenting all the way through. And I would really encourage people to think about kind of what are the issues within Billy's story that have relevance for children in your community, in your context, whatever country or part of the world you're based in, and how do we best respond to them in a way that reduces that risk and vulnerability. So I'd ask for some questions. If anybody had any questions, I've answered the stream. So I had two kind of sent in, so we make a point of responding to them. So the first one was from Andy O'Brien. So Andy, thank you for commenting. So the first, there was a couple of parts to your question. Is there statistical or even anecdotal evidence to help us understand the extent to which a lack of suitable foster placements leads to young people who would otherwise be taken out of the home here and being allowed to stay? And I guess part of the kind of thing that triggers that is, I'm aware that in the commentary to Billy's story, I think it's in week 5, what is said in the commentary is that the foster care, the panel members are aware of the fact that within their area, finding foster care placements is challenging. And that certainly in the UK, that is a factor that is replicated up and down the country at times. The different authorities are in different places with it. But by and large, we will often see local authorities and different agencies almost on recruitment drives trying to recruit foster parents because we've got a shortage. And I guess that this point or the suggestion that's been made in the commentary is that panel members are human, and if panel members know that, somewhere whilst we should still be making decisions that are absolutely assessed on what we think is going to be in the best needs of the child, if somewhere at the back of the panel member's mind, if they happen to be in an area where perhaps there is a profound lack of foster carers, it would almost be impossible to imagine that isn't stored away, and is that potentially going to impact on their thinking in some way. So Andy, I don't know about the statistical evidence, but I do know that from my own kind of practice experience, that working with children and going backwards and forwards to children's hearings with them, supporting them through that process, and children that I worked with in residential childcare who were part of the kind of children's hearing system, and especially children who were part of the children's hearing system for quite a period of time, so would be attending a number of hearings over a period of years. And panel members obviously been aware of the story and history of children and recommendations that had been made and whether they had been followed through or not. Then I would suggest that the anecdotal evidence would be, panel members absolutely are aware of that, and probably the most explicit example I can think of is a adolescent girl that I worked with in a young people centre who on either 2 or 3 occasions was made subject of a secure order. So the children's panel made the recommendation, behaviour is sufficiently risky that we feel that this child should be placed in a secure placement for a period of up to 21 days. 3 times they made that recommendation, but she never went to a secure centre because there was never a placement available for her, sort of thing. And when they eventually changed the decision, there must have been part of the panel thinking, well, what's the point in us continually recommending something if it's not going to be followed through because the resources aren't allowing it to be acted upon? So again, we're back to this bit of resources. But no, in all areas of social work, we talk about decisions should be assessment-led, and we should be making decisions based on the best needs of kind of children, or all areas of social work. We should be making decisions based on assessment. Practitioners, professionals, various people within the system are well aware of what the practice demands are, or what the resource issues are, and sometimes we're left thinking there's absolutely no point in recommending X, Y, or Z, or it feels like there's no point because that's never going to be achieved. That's never going to be realised, and perhaps better to focus on what we can actually do and what we can actually achieve. And then you move on to ask, what measures do we need to take to alleviate the shortage? And you said either more funding, better recruitment drives, a message to the public that fostering is a viable career. I mentioned earlier, I mean, actually the local authority that I live in, for a time, you see adverts inside the buses, kind of local media, etc. You'll see that in a kind of lot of cities up and down the UK. I would ask everybody to think about kind of how's that dealt with in your country, in your area. But thinking about how do we promote foster care especially in areas where there's perhaps a shortage of it, how do we try and address that? Because that's something that a number of organisations have been thinking about for quite a while now. Then Deborah Johnson, thank you for posting your question. You say, what do you think is the reason for the decrease in children going into care? Is it a lack of money? Are families being left to fend for themselves, or is it other factors? And certainly, within a Scottish context, if my practice background was in residential childcare, over a long period of time, we've over a number of decades, we've seen less children being received into the residential childcare system. But that's primarily because kind of views and attitudes about the residential childcare system over time changed, and we moved away from kind of larger type of vision to kind of smaller homes that had less children. And then in parallel to that, we've many local authorities now having less facilities or less units. So overall, there's been less residential childcare beds available, and we can see the numbers going down. But I guess linking to my just kind of some of the stuff I've been saying earlier, right? Well, we might be seeing that happening, but parallel to that, if we just run with the UK example, what are we seeing in the UK just now? We're seeing poverty increase. We're seeing numbers around associated with the use of food banks explode, and we're seeing the amount of kind of families and often families with young children absolutely relying on food banks as a way to survive. And I mentioned previously that this is often families where one or both adults are in work. So it's often this is in work kind of poverty. So in terms of kind of what's going on in society, I think anybody kind of trying to make any sort of argument that we've got less children in need of care and protection would be kind of quite hard pushed to kind of sustain that argument. And then that's before we even think about but how much do we actually know, and how much can we make sense of what has been the immediate and what's going to be the longer term impact of COVID and the COVID restrictions. And certainly in this country, whilst we are out of kind of full lockdown as we experienced it in April and May, and we're seeing schools being back and such like, still got a different feel to it. So we've still got a number of kind of challenges as a society as we move forward, I think, in relation to this. And I pulled out one other comment just to kind of finish off with here, and it was from John Stafford. So John, thank you for making the comment. And this was a kind of final wrap up. We were talking about kind of how he'd enjoyed the course and different aspects of it. And then he said, the issue of funding for organisations to help children like Billy was surprising. As I suppose I'd always hoped that organisations like that, so you're just talking about the various organisations that might have supported Billy, would all have their funding that they needed for such a worthy and much needed cause. Hopefully in future these places will be given more funding and the recognition they need. Now, I couldn't agree with you kind of more strongly, John. I think there's kind of something quite almost profound for most societies in that, but kind of saying such as that if you want to judge a society by how it looks after its most vulnerable members. And when we're thinking about kind of children in need of kind of risk and care and protection and issues of kind of poverty and such like, then I guess for all of us, kind of wherever we live, wherever we're based in terms of whatever country, whatever part of the world, whatever community, kind of the way in which we care for and respond to the most vulnerable members of our society probably kind of reflects quite a lot about the values and the kind of characteristics of that kind of society itself. And certainly in the UK, there's some interesting things going on in terms of during lockdown. When we were initially during lockdown, there was a lot of notion of the country coming together and looking after each other and looking after its most vulnerable members of society. And I don't think it'd be too controversial that we kind of, it's not to say that's disappeared completely, but we see that beginning to fray a bit at the edges. We see that being a bit more kind of challenged now in terms of kind of where kind of things might be heading. So I really think in terms of kind of caring for vulnerable children, especially during this period in time, then it says something about us as a society as to the priority that we place on that or not. So thanks for the comment, John. We're just about out of time, so I'd like to kind of wrap up, say a couple of things to finish. One, kind of thanks for everybody that's participated this time round. You are part of a huge learning community now. So over 92,500 people have signed up for this programme now, which is fantastic. I'd also like to say that also this is the end of this part of this program. That we, if distance learning which is what you've engaged in with this, is something that you have found that you have enjoyed and you would like to do more of. At University of Strathclyde, there's a number of other kind of short courses like this offered via the FutureLearn platform. If you go on the University of Strathclyde website and search online learning, you'll find some links there. And there's a variety of other courses, including some others run and delivered by Celsius, who are part of this programme. Obviously, but perhaps what kind of more specifically in terms of my involvement, I'm also the course leader on a distance learning master's programme, so kind of quite different to this in terms of it was a master's level degree, and it has course fees and it's accredited and you get a qualification. So I kind of completely appreciate that it's kind of quite different in that regard. But if that might be something that you think might be suitable for you, then again, go on the University of Strathclyde website and either stick in Child and Youth Care Studies or stick in my name, and you'll kind of quite quickly find the details from that and look at that. And if you would, if any questions about that, you would like to kind of follow up, then kind of feel free to get in contact with me, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. But that's us out of time, so kind of thank you very much for your participation both in this session, but thanks also for your participation across the whole 6 weeks. And I see Andy's posted a comment there after I answered his question, so Andy, kind of thank you. Also, thanks for posting the question, and I hope you enjoyed the course over the 6 weeks. You'll retain access to the materials for a little bit yet, so kind of feel free to keep dipping out of them, kind of keep the conversations going, and enjoy whatever learning activity you engage in beyond this. But just finish up, say thank you very much, look after yourself and stay safe. Okay, thank you.